Hello, you lovely people, and welcome back to Sabbatical Stories. I'm your host, Bex Thomas, and I'm coming to you today from my garden/building site in rural France on the Normandy-Brittany border. I set up this podcast to inspire courage and normalise taking a break from your career, and I'd love it if you could help too by subscribing, liking, and rating the show. It really would mean a lot. Today I'm joined by the absolute firecracker that is Juliana Moreira, a Brazilian living in Texas, a marketing communications professional with a 20-year career in international multinationals, a wife, a writer, a traveller, and a spiritual woman stepping into their divine feminine. Juliana takes us on a journey of courage and shares what happens when you step into your own truth. We discuss what to do when your nearest and dearest doesn't initially support you, how a sabbatical can mean breaking a cycle and behaviours that are not serving you, why our inner critic can be so loud and how to quieten them, and much more. Deep down, you've tried, dig deep, search wide, enjoy your climb, it's all for you. Hi Juliana, and welcome to Sabbatical Stories. Thank you so much for being here and thank you for your time. I really do appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm the one who feels very honored to be here with you today.
And happy anniversary. I understand today is a big day for you.
It is. It feels so serendipitous to be here with you today on June 12th, recording this podcast, because it is the 1-year anniversary of returning to the corporate world after taking a 15-month career break. So it feels just like the best celebration I could have.
Amazing. Well, congratulations for being back a year, but even more so, congratulations for taking your 15 months career break. So look, as it's exactly that, your story, who better to introduce yourself than you? So can you please give us a bit of an intro to yourself and backdrop on your sabbatical story?
So I'm Juliana, and I'm someone who's still trying to figure life out. I would say that, I'll start professionally. That part I have that very well figured out. I have a 20-year career in the corporate world. I'm a marketing communications professional. I've worked in multinationals and startup companies for most of my career. And in my spare time, I also write a blog. It's a personal blog. Where I write about my travels, which is, my hobbies, which is something I really like. I write about spirituality, and I write about my career break stories, which the blog came from being on a career break. I'm also married to a really wonderful man. I am from Brazil. The accent is Brazilian, and I live in Texas in the United States.
Fabulous. What an introduction. Let's start at the beginning. What prompted and triggered the decision to take your career break?
I've always had this desire to travel the world for months on end since I was a little kid growing up in Brazil. But growing up in where I grew up, I had a comfortable middle-class life, but my parents never really had the financial means to just let me go and do a backpacking trip around the world. But life came to me and I started to be given these opportunities to be out in the world. I was an exchange student in high school. So I came to the United States that way. Later on, I returned to the United States as a college student. I graduated. I started working. I started to make my own money and I started to travel more. But I never had either enough money to really do the backpacking trip I wanted to do, or I never had enough time once I started to become really engaged in my career. So for 20 years, I sat with that appetite to be out in the world. I never really took the initiative to plan anything. And then, of course, the pandemic in 2020 came along around the world for so many of us. So many things shifted. And so many things shifted for me emotionally, because it was, I think, not just a pandemic, but I was also in my 40s. It was my own midlife spiritual awakening starting to happen. And I started to really pay attention to this voice inside of me that said, the life that you live right now is a comfortable life, but there is something off, there is something missing. And the more I pay attention to that, the more I knew that I needed to do a massive shift, and the travels kept coming up. And then finally, I didn't, and then I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't taking the initiative. I was just feeling it. And then finally, the pivotal moment was the company that I was working at for 7 years went through a big reorg, and my job was impacted. And I had the choice at the time to either stay in the company, earning a very good 6-figure salary, great benefits, great vacation packages, or I had the choice to take a severance package and leave. And guess what I did? I took the severance package and I left. And this is how my career break story evolved. It was, I mean, there were a lot of things in between, but it was really around having the courage to leave the safety of my job. The people closest to me thought I was crazy. My husband definitely did not support me making that decision, but I did it anyway, because I knew that at that time, I just came to this realization that if I don't do this now, if I die, because I will, because we all will. And the pandemic was there to show mortality right there in front of us. Whatever is going to happen after I die, I would say I'm going to have to come back in order to live those experiences. It really was that kind of spiritual shakeup, that I had. That's what I felt. It was like, I owe this to this life on earth that I'm experiencing in this body right now. I owe it to myself to do this.
Wow. So triggered by a reorg at the company, but had the feelings for a long time. The interesting point is your husband not being on board and being supportive. Talk us through how you navigated that and still managed to come to the decision that, no, you're going to do this. What did that look like?
My husband is a wonderful man, and just being very clear up front, I admire that man so, so much. My husband is also an engineer, someone who's very, very different from me in the way that he approaches and views life, in the sense that his choices are very rational, always weighing the pros and cons. And in his view of the world, it is insane for somebody to leave a very prestigious role that I had, the amount of money that I was making, in order to embark on something that felt like a teenage fantasy. Even though on a rational level, thankfully, and I know that I'm very privileged for this opportunity, there was going to be no babies starving in the house because we don't have children, we have a cat. There was going to be no issues to the household finances during the time that I was gone, because I contribute equally to the household, and I had saved enough to go on my explorations and still keep paying the bills at home. But it didn't matter that I explained all of these things to him. He just thought that was insane of me. And of course, that it was a pivotal moment also for our marriage, because I didn't want to hurt him, but I also knew that I had to do this thing for myself. And what I started to realize during that time is that what I was living with him, it was just the same script that I had been living so often in my life, which is prioritizing other people's needs instead of my own needs. It was giving the power to someone else other than my own. It was trying to be the people pleaser, make other people's happy in detriment of my own happiness. And I started to see that this whole challenge that was happening with me wanting to go on a career break was life giving me the opportunity to break that pattern, to break the pattern of people pleasing. And I knew that it could come with a cost. I was very scared. What does that mean for my marriage? I'm going to be traveling solo, in different countries for months at a time. I made it clear to him that he can join me. But of course he was upset, and I would just say it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I mean, he was clearly very upset. But what ended up happening is that during the planning process, the more that I started to lose my fear of going on my career break, the more I started to see that he was starting to get on board with me and start to support me. To a point that halfway through my career break, this man would open his mouth and be so proud of me. Look at what my wife is doing. Look at how amazing and incredible she is for doing what she's doing. And towards the end of my career break, where I was like, I can go back to work now and start working, or I would like to continue this a little longer. But I said, but if I'm to continue longer, the thing is, I will need financial support towards the end of it to continue it longer. And he said, I will support you. if you want to stay another 6 months or so. I mean, it was a complete shift.
What shifted? What do you think shifted in him?
I think there was a few things, and I know it may sound even a little bit woo-woo, and I'm going to use that word woo-woo many times because woo-woo feels like a common theme throughout my career break. I think that the moment that we start to really step into our power and be clear about what's important for us, it's going to shake the shadow side of other people. And I think my husband, he reflected my own fears. I was afraid to leave the comfort of my career. I was afraid to leave the corporate world. I had those fears. He simply reflected my fears back. There is a reason why I am this free-spirited person in my soul, and I married a man who, likes security. There is a reason, right? So I just started to really pay attention to that part. And then I realized that, the moment I started to step into my power, he started to see that it was okay. And somehow he felt empowered too to change and to really support me. And by that time, it was like, listen, I love you, but I also love me a lot. And I'm going to do these things because they're important for me. So in the end, I would say that my career break, there were a lot of moments of heartbreak. It was not easy on the marriage, and I don't sugarcoat it because I want people to understand that all stories are different. I've seen different stories. I met career breaker who are married, and the spouses joined them on their trips, and the spouses were fully supported from the start and paid for the finances and everything. That was not my story, but it didn't keep me from going on this adventure that really was the best thing I could have done for my life. And in the end, it strengthened my marriage.
And so what advice would you have for somebody who has got a spouse or a support person, whether that's a parent or a friend, who is not on board?
Yeah, so my first is, if you really want to go on a career break, share this with people who will support you to start. In the initial stages, don't share with people who are going to block you, because these people, I'm sure your family, your spouses, they love you, but they will not understand you and they will set you back. Because just like with my husband, they will reflect your fears, maybe they're like I was telling you, and they're going to have their own fears. So it's important that early on you share your desires, like this entrepreneurial idea, with people who will be supportive. So join a community of career breakers, hire a career break coach, talk to people who will support you on the journey early on until you're very clear and grounded and centered on why you need to take this break. And then you start to share that experience with others. And then you're going to feel more grounded, centered, and stronger to make your claim. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I love that. And it's around you becoming clear on the why and the how to be able to articulate it, isn't it? It's the same with any message. You must, in your communications field, the message has to be clear, otherwise it can be taken the wrong way or land wrong. And if you've got doubters in your community, you need to be crystal clear on the why and the benefits and the how before you communicate with them.
Right on, you're spot on, because, I know that the fears and the narratives, the conversations that you may be having in your head, they were different from person to person. But I'll tell you what was going on in my mind. In my mind, it was like this. It is so self-indulgent to take this career break. Oh my gosh, Juliana, really? Do you really need to do this? And guess what? That's what I was hearing back.
Were people that crude with you? Would they actually articulate and say that to you?
I have heard that from people, yes. Yeah, I did
wow.
hear that. I'll tell you, most of the people in my orbit, they were supportive once I started going there. But I did have those kinds of comments, right? But the worst of all, honestly, really was myself, was my own inner critic.
Yeah,
I think that,
your own inner
my
critic,
own inner critic was the one that I had to overcome and quiet down. And a big part of the intentions that I had set for my career break were around creating new ways of being. I wanted by the end of my career, but I was very clear up front on what kind of experiences I wanted to have on my career break, because at the end of it, I didn't know what I would be doing professionally. I didn't know a lot of things, but I knew that I couldn't be a person who was so scared and highly critical of myself all the time. Even though on the outside, people would say, Juliana, there is nothing scared about you. You're fearless. You've been doing this since you're 16 years old, getting out of your country, moving to another country. On the outside, yes, I can see how people say those things about me, but inside, all of these decisions, everything that I would say, how I would show up, it would come with this enormous shame spiral, of I shouldn't have said it that way, or I should have said differently, or this is so bad what I just did. So I knew that this was part of what I needed to really be mindful in my career break. So overcoming these barriers, overcoming people telling me what I should or shouldn't do with my life, and being able to clearly state my needs, it was part of who I was meant to become once the break was over.
I love the fact that quietening those feelings of shame and the inner critic was one of your themes of your career break. How did you overcome it, though, to actually take the plunge and take the career break? Like, before having done all of that work around quietening the inner critic, what was the dialogue that was going in on your head when your inner critic was saying, this is self-indulgent, Juliana, and do you really need this? How did you overcome that right at the beginning?
Yes, so my inner critic was not quiet when I took the break. She started to quiet down throughout the break, and especially towards the end of the break. When I decided to take the plunge and say, I just have to do it, it was like, I just know I have to jump. I just know I have to jump, because it came to a time where it's like, I'm going to have to tell my manager. I don't know if you remember, during the reorg, I was offered, even though I already said I want to take the severance package, the manager at the time said, I'm offering you to stay longer. And I just knew that, like, this is life telling me that if it is, again, the reason, it's mind versus heart again, versus heart. And if I go yes, I'm going to stay, it's going to be me once again going the rational route and not following the whispers of my soul. And I just knew that I had to follow the whispers of my soul, the whispers of my heart, the gut feeling, that I just had to take the plunge. It was just like that. And it was scary. My career break coach said, she had this term, scarce-sighted. That's how I was. I was excited, but I was absolutely scared the whole time. And that inner critic, throughout my break, she kept telling me so many things. Like, she still kept telling me for a long time that I was being self-indulgent, or she was telling me that I wasn't doing my break properly. So, for example, my break consisted of, I quit my job, and 3 days later, I was in Europe. I landed in Lisbon, and it was a 3-month solo trip. And throughout that time, that was the first phase of my career break, the 3-month solo trip, where I visited, I think at the time, I don't know how many countries I visited. But at the end of my career break, it was a total of 14 countries. But at that specific time, I would hear my inner critic saying things like, you're not really taking advantage of your days in your career break as you're supposed to. Oh, you just did too many things today, too many activities, too many experiences. Why don't you just rest? And then I would rest. Oh, no, you cannot rest when you are in Valencia, Spain. You're supposed to be out. So it was the entire time. When I was by myself doing the things that I wanted the most, I started to hear how loud those voices were in my head, and how loud that have been my entire life. And so it was really, being on a career break created a space for me to start to face her, and to realize that those voices were meant to keep me safe, keep me in old ways of being safe, being old ways of being. right? The things that I grew up saying, you're a good girl, you're such a good girl, you do what everybody wants you to do. You're supposed to be pleasing people. You're supposed to be, nice and beautiful and happy and all of those things all the time, and that's what I started to hear. So slowly, the, the inner critic started to fade the more that I didn't give her power.
Did you do any activities or things around that helped that fade?
Yes, I did. I started having these beautiful experiences. I started in Portugal, then I went to Spain. And when I was in Spain, after probably 3 weeks on the road, I started to feel tired because I was just doing a lot of sightseeing, and it was beautiful and it was fantastic, visiting all of these, museums and medieval towns and churches and all of that. And then I finally said, I just need nature. And I started to pay attention to what is it that my body really needs right now. And my body needed nature. And I found this retreat in the mountains in Andalusia. And it was a very rural place. It was not glamorous at all. In fact, it was like there was very little heating in this farmhouse that I stayed. It was extremely cold. I had to keep putting firewood in the fireplace in order to keep myself warm. But I had this couple. They were spiritual healers, and I would go to their yurt. They had like these yurts set up in their home. And I went through meditations and yoga classes and breathing exercises and started to really pay more attention, to listen to the, to the inner critic, and start to not be so mad at her, and just really to start to understand, again, like I said before, that she was there to keep me safe. So there was a lot of introspective work that I started to do that way, and which allowed me and created space for me to showcase other themes of my career break, which I didn't mention here, but I had these themes for my career break. One was about exploring, which had the travel component. I knew I needed to travel without a set itinerary. Like, I'm going to let my body choose where I'm going to go next. And I had chosen Europe as being the continent to get started. And so that was a theme. So the other theme was about spirituality in connection to source. So I started creating, what does that mean in practice? So going on these kinds of retreats, it was a way for me to connect with the spirituality theme. I started to journal. I started to write more on my social media feeds, but using a language that I like, a more poetic language, which I think it's more of the language of the soul. That's what I was choosing to do. The other theme was a very hard one, and the term is in Italian. It's called dolce far niente, which is the Italian for the sweetness of doing nothing. It was about learning how to rest, because I'm very much in go, go, go mode all the time. And for my entire career, 20-year career, I had been just in go, go, go mode. And I didn't know how to just be. I have to be always doing things. And and the other one was about express. Did I say? I think I maybe already said that. Express.
No, explore, you said.
And the other one was express and create, which was around, a lot of it had to do with my writing. So I love to write. And so I was writing, as I mentioned, more on social media, on my journal, but I also had these plans to write a book. And I started to outline a fictional novel that I never finished, but I kind of feel like my career break planted the seeds for that to happen. I just realized later on that that's not where I needed to go at that time. And then again, the final theme was around all of this would help me come into these new ways of being, where I would feel more empowered to live a line that felt more aligned.
I love the themes, because I think what that does is it gives you a loose idea to then explore within. And you mentioned the writing and the fictional book potentially, and I think what sabbatical gives us is that sacred time to be able to experiment. And sometimes there are red herrings. Mine, for example, was travel. So I honestly thought that what I wanted to do post my corporate career was something in travel. It was something very much related to travel. Now, of course, travel now does weave through what I do, because my sabbatical and career coaching, there's an element of travel, but actually travel was a red herring. I started to write about travel. I started to then put pressure on myself around what did I want to do in travel, and actually it's just something I love to do. And it was a red herring, but it gave me the opportunity and the space to explore. So I think those themes are beautiful to give you a bit of a guide, and those sort of rails, but not a strict plan, because at the end of the day, as you say, it's about undoing those stories of doing and becoming that human being.
It is, and it's like that is, if I have to say again, like what are some of the things that I was struggling, if people are considering going on a career break, that something that I really cordially strong for them to do is to have that clarity, at least on a higher level of these themes, because again, you need to allow room for magic. You don't know what's going to happen on your career break. I think it's always so important to not be completely set up on like having a schedule, right? Like, for example, on my travels, it was about, yeah, sure, I want to visit these places, but I don't want to have a schedule every single hour of my day, because at some point I may meet people that are going to show me this very, incredible place. And those kinds of magic moments have happened throughout my trip because I allowed that experience to happen. So absolutely have those themes, but I think also that what is just so important too is to, with the themes, it's about what do you want to feel more than what you want to do. It's like, what do you want to feel? Because then you don't get so caught up on a specific outcome. I'm going to give you an example. One of my travel fantasies since I was a child was to go to Valencia, Spain, to see the Mediterranean from there. And in my fantasy, and in my dreams from being a child, I would be wearing a white dress on a beautiful summer day with a straw hat, and walking down the beautiful beach. Guess what? I arrived in Valencia and it was so cold and rainy. I had to wear, a jacket and gloves and a scarf and a hat to protect me from the cold. So there was no white dress. But what I do remember is how I wanted to feel in Valencia. I wanted to feel beautiful. I wanted to feel happy and connected to something greater than myself. And I felt all of that. It wasn't like the my little fantasy, my little girl's fantasy, but I felt all of that as I was walking in that cold beach with dark gray clouds.
What other pivotal moments or experiences did you have whilst on your sabbatical?
I think that really tapping into my self-expression would be one of them. So I mentioned that one of my themes was about express and create. So around month 9 of my career break, I realized that I didn't want to keep writing that novel. What I wanted to do is to start just telling my stories about my travels, about anything. And that's when I created my blog. And that blog was really this pivotal moment for me to step into this woman that I'm very proud of who I'm becoming, because it's like this alignment, this person that I know that I still make lots of mistakes, but I am so much more compassionate about her. It's like I started to write about things that normally I wouldn't. So I'm going to give you an example, which is a big part of my career break theme. 4 months before my career break started, I went through surgery. And it was a massive surgery that for an entire year during my career break, I would not openly talk about it because I was very ashamed or scared or thought that it wasn't the right thing to do. And because I had already learned so much about myself on my career break, I decided on the 1 year anniversary of that surgery to open up about what had happened to me. I had a hysterectomy. Basically, I had to have my uterus removed because my uterus got sick the year before my career break. And it went very fast that the doctors thought that I had cancer. I had this massive ball of fibroid inside my uterus. And the surgery got to be scheduled 4 weeks before I was set to go on my trip, which to me, it was like, this is mind-boggling that it's happening right now because, I always had these dreams that I wouldn't make it to the airport, that I would lose my passport. And it was like, this is it. I'm not going to be able to go on my trip. But no, that surgery became one of the big themes, actually, not the surgery itself, but open up. I started to see that it had to do with me reconnecting with my feminine power, which is the power to create our reality. Like women hold that seed of creation. And I was losing my uterus. I was losing my womb, which is the seat of feminine, of the creation, right? Life comes from the womb. And it's like, at the same time, I got in touch that like, yeah, the moment that I lost it, it was almost like the disease was also the cure. It was also part of the cure. I lost that part of me that was sick because I wasn't giving myself permission. And I know this sounds woo-woo again, but I really had this clear realization in me that my uterus got sick because it was filled with the resentment towards not stepping into my power for so many years of my life. The moment it was no longer inside of me, I have this new energetic womb that comes with possibilities. And one of them being just tap into being me, not being afraid to be myself. I thought that as a businesswoman, as a career woman, I couldn't talk about these things. And so this pivotal thing that happened in my career break is that I started to talk about these things. So I wrote this blog post about losing my womb. And all of a sudden I have women from other countries finding me in the internet and saying, I'm going through the same thing. Can you help me? Can you give me a word of what to do? And I had these deep connections with women I've never seen in my entire life. And I helped them in a moment that was very challenging and hard for their lives. So, and I also started to see that it's okay. I can be a career woman and I can talk about these things. I can be in the corporate world and talk about emotions and sensitive things. And I can be bubbly and I can be sparkly. That was another thing, like the pivotal things that started to happen to me is that I can be all of these things and be successful in my career. I don't have to be someone else because I always subscribed to my ways of being needed to be more like masculine. And not that masculine is bad. We all have feminine and masculine in us, but masculine in the sense of I valued more of like that rational model of thinking and I put my emotions under the rug. When I was in the process, then when I decided to really go back to the workplace for real, like I just really used my intuitive powers that I had then acquired to say, this is the right opportunity for me. And I did. And I made this choice to go to this company where I work right now, where today is my 1 year anniversary. And it felt extremely aligned to be there, to be working there.
And how have you continued to take the lessons that you've learned and that identity shift through that year? Because I think sometimes, certainly people that I work with, the challenge sometimes is the coming home or the returning to BAU as such. Are there any sort of integration techniques that you've used or activities that have helped you to really ensure that you lace now you and continue on that path through? Now you've done a year back in corporate?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that going back to the corporate world could activate this old programming, right, of a 20-year career that taught that where I created this narrative that I had to just operate with my rationality, to not really express myself fully, or when I would express myself, like I said, have those shame spirals, feel bad, the inner critic would kick in. So I just started to really not fine tune, but really to be in tune with the fact that the corporate world going back would reactivate that programming. And so what I did for that integration, I actually created like guiding principles, which, I put it on my blog. I had these guiding principles, like about how I wanted to show up in life. Be really clear, crystal clear about what are the things that are valuable and important to me. So if I was tested, I could have guardrails to say that, hey, it's time to reset again. And it was very important to do that because I'll give you an example about resting, right? I have this tendency I say my masculine side is very highly activated. My masculine side wants to do things, wants to get things done, It's that force that propels me to take everything, do the massive like to-do lists and scratch the items off my to-do list. But it exhausts me. And being in the corporate world I have this big sense of responsibility and I want to get things done. And it's very easy for me to just get very tired. Even if my manager is not really putting all that pressure on myself, I was putting that pressure on myself to deliver and to give results. And so I had this guardrail about rest, that I needed to allow myself opportunities to rest and to feel the sensual pleasures that I told you before. So for example, when I'm exhausted now, I go get a massage. I'm finally taking baths, bubble baths. I've had it, I never did that. I only took showers. So or going on weekend getaways to just completely reset, be out in nature, like giving myself this opportunity to reconnect with rest, going to bed early, having a better sleep hygiene. So that's the kind of integration happened by being clear-minded about what it is, that the pitfalls that that you can fall quickly, and then having the guardrail to bring you back.
How do you keep yourself accountable for that? Because it's all very well, isn't it, to have these guardrails, but what advice would you give people to hold themselves accountable?
I think that we always have choices, and like I have this big sense of we are responsible for the realities that we create around us, whether good or bad. And it's not that bad things won't happen to us. Somebody, you have no control over how other people are going to come to you, if they're going to yell at you, if they're going to, however, what it is, but you have control of how you feel. So I think that sense of accountability comes from like, I have a choice right now to either go down the spiral, for example, of the crazy rabbit hole of doing, not allowing myself to rest, or I have the choice to create space for rest. So I think that to me, and also like I journal. Having the blog for me helps me keep accountable because I go back to what I wrote. And I also have a community of people that I met in my career break. Like some of them, they didn't go on career break specifically, but part of that spirituality theme, I've done many courses on spirituality. And one of them connected me to a community of women who we call ourselves the Soul Sisters. And it's a very open, non-judgmental dialogue where we're able to go in that community and express and share. These are my struggles. This is what I'm going through. And they help me keep me accountable and bring me back to what my original intentions were.
Yeah, I love that. And I think finding what works for the individual from an accountability perspective is so important. We can give advice and talk, but actually it's really what works for you. And for me, I'm similar, having a community of individuals who I feel accountable to and also want to be accountable for, that reciprocal kind of relationship is a beautiful thing. I'm very aware of time. I could talk to you forever, and we need to do a take two because There's so many stories. I think 15 months condensed into under an hour is not possible. But what I love to do is always end with asking you what your top 3 pieces of advice would be for somebody who is either considering or about to take a sabbatical or a career break.
I mentioned some of these before, but I will bring them back. The first is really honor that voice that you're hearing inside of you saying, I want to do a reset. Honor that voice. Don't try to hide it. Pay attention to it. Nurture it. Doesn't mean that you're going to have to take a career break tomorrow or even like a year from now. It can be years down the road, but start to honor and plan it. So that is one thing. The number 2 is, again, I said it, share your idea with people who will be supportive of it, especially in those early stages where it's just a seedling, where it's just germinating. Wait until that idea has stronger roots before you really share it out with the world. You need to keep, it helps you keep these energetic boundaries, which I think are very, very important. Hire a career break coach if you can. I think that is really extremely important because a career break is this incredible thing, but it can be also, life happens in your career break. You're going to feel heartbreaks. You're going to feel, there will be challenges that will happen in life that you wouldn't know, like that maybe you can do it, you can explore them on your own, but having a trained coach will really help you come back. You were talking about accountability earlier. It will make you feel accountable for what it is that you wanted to accomplish during your career break. Because I will tell you even this, even during my career break, my do type of mode showed up during my career break. And if not for my career coach, I would have ruined my career break trying to do with my to-do lists. So she helped me keep accountable to my Dolce Far Niente team, for example. And just, be graceful with yourself in the process. It is the road less traveled, but you are the CEO of your life. That is one of the things that I took. You are the one who gets to set the standards for how you want to live your life.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Juliana. And thank you so much once again for your time. I really do appreciate you. So thank you for coming on. And if people want to find your blog, where do they find you?
Yes, the blog is globaljuliana.com. Juliana with 1 A.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you're keeping that on an ongoing basis.
I am keeping that up. So you can find career break stories, you can find travel tips, you can just find more of like chronicles about my spiritual and experiences into embracing all of me, the light and the dark.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you for
Take care.
Really appreciate it.
And a heart full of soul, it's connected. And I'm moving along. I won't let it.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Sabbatical Stories. I really do appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to join us. Thanks to Juliana for sharing her beautiful, courageous and spiritual story. Some absolute gems of advice in there for anyone thinking about or about to embark on a career break. I feel we may even need a follow-up. The link to Juliana's blog and her LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes. Thank you so much to Auntie B at the Flaxen, my incredible, patient and talented producer. And I also wanted to give a special shout out to the incredibly talented Joanna Cook, whose soulful blend of smooth vocals we're lucky enough to use throughout the show. If you're interested in sharing your story on Sabbatical Stories, please do get in touch. DM me on Insta, sabbatical_stories, or Rebecca Thomas on LinkedIn. Both links will be in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, like and rate the show. It would mean a lot to me. Also, if you think a friend will like the episode, please do visit over to them. After all, sharing is caring. Until the next time, take care and dream big.
could somehow steal you away from how you feel. Appreciate your situation. Let's try to keep this real. And it's like she said, we're all affected, yeah. And it's like he said, I won't let it out. Turn the other cheek, show them your smile. You won't believe things for a while. And taking matters into your own hands, you won't believe that you're making headway, yeah, and plans. And deep down, you try, deep, search wide, enjoy your climb. It's all for you. Deep down, you try, deep, search wide, enjoy your climb. It's all for you. Oh, do-do-do-do, dig deep, search wide, tendencies and determination.